Should be good. You're on.
Oh my goodness gracious! It's Tuesday, February 11th at 1:32 in the afternoon, and this is Car Sense with your hosts, me, Ray, and well, that damn good-looking guy wearing a black CQA hat, Brandon. How are you today?
I am good, Ray. So I got a couple things that we need to talk about before we get into the show. So one thing I want to say, congratulations. Last time we were talking, you were not a grandfather, and today you were a grandfather.
I am indeed. My daughter has asked that we keep it off of social media, and she'll make the announcement when she's ready. But yes, I had a granddaughter on Thursday, and I'm not going to steal any of their thunder, and I'll leave it up to them to post pictures and whatever about their daughter when my daughter and her son-in-law are ready. But I will say this: she is absolutely beautiful, and we share.
No, you gotta stop talking about it. I didn't know we couldn't talk about it, so let's just stop talking about it.
But I do need to share one thing. There are two things that she and I have in common. We both have round faces and limited hairline. Now, my suspicion is that at some point she'll actually grow hair, and I will not. And
we would hope so.
Yeah, that's one of my hopes for. So it was exciting times.
So I do want to. Okay, let's switch topics here then. So you know that I was sick 2 weeks ago for like a week and a half or whatever, and now my freaking son's sick. So we're always sick all the time. But anyway, so he skipped out of school today. Skipped out of school. We did not have him go to school today because he's sick. At 6 years old, he's not skipping class yet. But anyway, so he was watching a movie today. And he asked my wife, what does horse's ass mean? Because it came on the screen, and it's Home Alone. So he's watched that quite a bit. And so luckily, my wife was there to tell him what a horse's ass was. And it wasn't his father explaining to him what a horse's ass was.
I remember one time when I think Zach was in... I don't know. I want to say third or fourth grade. After dinner, he came over to the sofa where his grandfather and I were sitting, and he stood behind me and he says, "I need to ask you a question. What does F mean?" And I said, "Excuse me." He said, "Yeah, my teacher said I should ask you." And I said, "Well, it is the ultimate curse word. And when you get a little older, I'll teach you how to use it properly in a sentence."
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how we're going to approach the cuss word. Luckily, he hasn't, at least from what I know, hasn't. You know, I know he hasn't picked up any from myself and my wife yet.
Yeah,
because he'd be saying it all the time. But I'm glad that we can tell him from what he's hearing from a movie and maybe from some other kids, and not us slipping up. I will say the one thing though, his first word ever out of his mouth, well, I guess it's 2 words, was asshole.
Okay.
He was just saying like baby noises or whatever. He's a very small kid. He was making noises but not saying any words or whatever. And for whatever reason, I just looked at him. I don't know what me and my wife were saying, but it was just like, okay, asshole. And he just repeated it right back to me.
That's wonderful.
So my mother won't know about that, but that officially were his first 2 words, and that was from his daddy. Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Yeah, you know, we have to teach them the right things in life. That's all I can say. I will tell you, I remember one time as a family, we were going up to flying from Phoenix to Reno and then driving to Lake Tahoe. And Dara and my wife, Suzanne, were sitting in front of Zach and I on the plane. And, you know, I think Zach was 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10 years old. I don't know. And we were in the back and I was teaching them how to play blackjack because... You know, there's certain life skills that you should learn early in life so that you can get good at them. Now, my wife, God bless her, Suzanne, she had a slightly different approach. She didn't think that was a the appropriate thing for me to be teaching. I don't know why. She had been a blackjack dealer at the Playboy Club in Atlantic City, so I thought she would have appreciated it.
I can tell you there's probably at least 5 or 6 times a day where my wife just looks at me just straight into my soul and says, "Can you not say that in front of our son, please?" I'm always the same thing. What?
Yeah. It's just part of life. He's got to hear it sometime. You might as well hear it.
Yeah, no, I do have to get better with that. He's going to pick up something from me and take it to school, and then he's going to get in trouble for it. It's going to be like, well, my daddy said it, and then he's going to say to the teacher, well, my daddy also said you're an idiot. So
yeah, that's funny.
Anyway, so Elvis, the Bully King, wants us to get back to car talk and deals. And I can tell you, Elvis, we're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about. We don't know. No, we will. We're going to get to some car stuff. Let's start off. Let's talk about Ford for a little bit. We can do that. All right. We're gonna start it right here. Oh, that's a bad face. Let's see here.
Well, you were about to say something, apparently.
All right, here we go. All right, Ray, I want you to check out this Ford dealership right here. We did a video here recently. You see the ice on the ground, but look at all the trucks. Look at where they're parked. Look at all the Broncos. Absolutely insane how much inventory this Ford dealership had. Now, Ford and GM, they recently just reported their earnings. And what I wanted to highlight was that, okay, both companies actually had some good numbers.
Yes.
Their stock sold off afterwards because they had some big time warnings for this year, for 2025. And just want to show you that inventory on that Ford dealer lot, because Ford right now has over 100 days supply of inventory sitting on their dealer lots. And this is a big reason why these two stocks have gotten hit pretty hard. This is a reason why Ford is throwing out a bunch of warnings for 2025. And I think as we go through this year, it's going to get worse. You're going to see more incentives come from Ford. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about, okay, these dealer scenario. You've worked in these dealerships. What is going through your mind right now as a sales manager, as an inventory manager, on a Ford lot in particular, where you're seeing, okay, that they're cutting production of some of these vehicles, and they're still wanting you to take some allocations. What's going through your mind right now?
Let me preface this by saying I am so thankful at the moment that I no longer manage dealerships in any way, shape, or form. And the reason I say that is there are just so many unknowns that we have to consider in 2025. Businesses like to have a real good understanding of what the future holds, what the signals are for what's going to happen in the future. And right now, we don't know if you're in business from one day to the next what the future holds. There's just so much speculation and so much talk and so many different tariffs that have been spoken about for different countries, for different materials. So if I was a manager at a Ford dealership, or any dealership for that matter, I wouldn't know what the hell to expect. I would be very, very, when it came to inventory, I would be very conservative about what I stocked. I would not want to get too far over my skis as far as inventory and how much inventory I have on hand, because I just don't know where we're headed in the future. Now, if you're part of Ford and Lincoln Mercury, and you have Lincoln at your dealership. Nobody has Mercury anymore. But if you have Lincoln at your dealership and you have Nautiluses, and you can get more before any tariffs go into effect on the Nautilus, because the Nautilus is built in China, and there's going to be a 10% tariff on anything coming in from China. Well, if I was selling Nautilus
as of right now, we're getting wishy-washy here on the tariffs. Yeah.
Yes. As of today, So if I were a dealer and Ford was offering me more of those and they sold well at my dealership, I would probably take extra ones that trying to play the long game, figuring in the future, any ones that I were to get could be as much as 10% more expensive, or even 5% more expensive. So I think you have to be conservative and you have to kind of pick and choose what you want at the dealership. And I know Ford is going to try and push inventory down dealers' throats. But I there has to be a good incentive for you to take them. So you need to negotiate a good deal with your factory representative to make sure that you're leveling the playing field so that it could be equal or more in your favor.
So I want to let's look at this again. I paused it right here because if you see on the left, see that first Bronco. I wonder if I can move me out of the way. Yeah. So see that first Bronco on the left right here.
Yes.
It's actually on the grass. So
yes.
All of this line of let's see, there's Ford Lightnings, there's F-150s, there's big body Broncos right there. This is just maybe 25% of this whole line. And then on this right-hand side, this is where people are supposed to drive.
Yes.
So this is where they actually have these cars parked because they're just out of space. And if you hold my mouse over here on this right-hand side over here, that is their service center parking.
Oh my!
And
goodness.
those are all brand new vehicles. Here's my question for you. So we have all these tariffs that there's speculation whether or not these bluffing, whatever. Maybe it's going to come from Mexico. Maybe it's going to come whatever. Is there any situation from you from a manager standpoint getting vehicles more right now because of the threat of prices going up potentially? Is that even a thing? Or do you think the situation's so bad right now at these dealerships that they're just like, I just need to get rid of what I have now and we'll figure it out later?
I would take the approach of I just need to figure out how to get rid of what I have now. And the reason I say that is if you're already overstocked with inventory and you think to yourself, well, there could be tariffs and the prices could go up, so maybe I should take on more inventory now. And you're going to sit with that inventory for a longer period of time, and floor plan costs are going to add up on that inventory. So would the cost of carrying that extra inventory outweigh what the ultimate new pricing might be if there were a tariff? And I think I would lean more towards being conservative and thinking I'd rather just have the vehicle come in with the higher price later rather than sit on what I have now. Now, the hope would be that eventually you would sell the older stuff that you've been carrying because the MSRP is going to be less expensive to begin with. Now, here's the real kicker. What if the tariffs only last a week? Or what if the tariffs last two? I mean, we have no idea how long any of this stuff is going to last. So how are you supposed to plan? How do you look at the future and go, oh my God, we're going to have these tariffs. We're not going to have these tariffs. It is a bluff. It's not a bluff. It's, hell, I might be willing to pay more for the car if it comes through with fentanyl in it. I don't know. Maybe that's the way they get the fentanyl into the United States. I don't know. The whole concept of, well, we want to stop the flow of fentanyl. Countries all over the world have been trying to stop the flow of illegal and illicit drugs. Well, ever since there's been illegal and illicit drugs, it doesn't have, you're not going to stop it. Okay. There's too much money to be made. So All
right, just a message to the to some editing that's going to go on after this video. That's going to need to be bleeped. Anyway, so here's the thing. I'm getting you off this topic real quick.
Yeah.
So here's one big thing that Ford and GM talked about. We'll roll back into the tariffs conversation here. That was one of their big warnings, is that, okay, for Ford's case, it was going to be if we get these tariffs from Mexico. And from what it sounded like from Jim Farley from their earnings notes,
yes,
they expected something. Whether it's 25%, it's going to be something that's coming from Mexico that's going to make the auto industry more difficult to operate in. That's what they're expecting, and that's what they're telling shareholders. If they didn't think this was going to be the case, what's going on? All right, somebody clicked something, didn't mean to. Anyway, so if that's going to be the case, then you're going to have prices that have to be increased, whether it's Ford that's eating them, the consumer that's eating them, which is going to decrease sales. And then on top of that, you have delays that can happen in production, because Ford said that if we have 25% tariffs, we got to figure out something else. And that means moving production to the U.S. But here's the thing. If you move production to the U.S., you are going to get delays, but you're going to have to pay more in labor. So it's still going to be higher. Either way, it's going to be a higher cost.
You would think that would be the way it could and would possibly play out. And so if you're Ford, and it's not just Mexico, it's Canada, so, how many vehicles are built in Canada that come to the United States? How many vehicles are built in Mexico that come into the United States? How many vehicles that are built in the United States get shipped all over the world? It's hard for each one of these manufacturers to read the tea leaves. Because I'm not sure the tea leaves are even floating in tea. It's so hard because you don't get a centralized message on a daily basis as to what the plan really is. So if you're a manufacturer, if you don't know, you don't know, and it just makes it that much more difficult. And there's only so much of the tariffs that any of these automobile manufacturers are going to be willing to eat, and the excess portion that they ain't willing to eat, well, that's going to end up raising the MSRP and the invoice pricing to the dealers, which ultimately means the ultimate buyer, the American consumer, is going to be asked to pay even more for the same product that they were paying less for just a few weeks ago or a few days ago. Could it stunt sales? I don't know. Could it drive more people out of the market? I would suspect it would. We know affordability is an issue. Can they make it up with lower interest rates? I don't know. I haven't heard that the Fed's planning on reducing interest rates any great degree. So it could severely impact the industry as we know it, and the profits in the industry as we know it. I'm going to sneeze now. We're not.
All right, we'll pause. We'll pause for the cutout of this.
Oh, damn it. When I think I'm going to sneeze, I'm not.
All right, well, if you're going to sneeze, just put up. I'll tell you what. I'm going to mute you, and you can sneeze whenever you want to. Never mind. I'm sorry.
I could mute me when I'm going to sneeze.
All right, we'll get back to it.
You're going to cough.
Oh, man. All right, so we have two that, okay, Ford also warned about some warranty costs, and this is just an ongoing thing, and we're talking about GM here, too, with their earnings that they just released. One thing that they didn't mention going forward was a headwind of warranty costs, but we know that we have that GM that's under investigation right now for their 6.2 liter motors. And this is like, I think 2019 to 2024. But I think the 2025 motors are the same anyway. They have the same, like the active fuel management or whatever that was giving them problems, where their rods can just blow through the side of the engine block. So I think going forward,
problem? Would that be a problem?
Yeah, if you create a shotgun size hole in the side of the block, yeah, that's a problem.
Would that
but anyway,
stop unexpectedly?
And that's why they're doing the investigation, right? Okay. So it's a big safety concern. But we saw this same kind of probe that was put on to Toyota before they had all these big time warranty costs that came up too. So I think for GM and for Ford, quality going forward is going to continue to be an issue, and it's going to continue to cost these companies a lot of money. And GM is just the latest one. Seems like we're getting some kind of motor news from some kind of manufacturer every other week.
It is kind of crazy. And what's crazy is that Ford has had excessive warranty costs for years and years and years because, well, I don't know, they've led the industry in recalls for years and years and years. And despite of that, they had record profits last year. So it must be hard if you're a bean counter and you're the CEO and you're listening to the bean counters. It must be hard as the CEO to say, well, we really must improve quality so we have less recalls. When the bean counters say, well, the cost of improving quality would actually be more expensive than us just taking care of the damn recalls when they happen. That to me is the scariest part of the whole thing. It's cheaper to allow for a recall than it is to produce it right in the first place. And I guess it's cheaper because, well, it doesn't impact every vehicle. And just because you recall 600,000 vehicles doesn't mean 600,000 vehicles are going to show up at the dealerships to get fixed under that recall. So even though the recall expenses are higher than they should be, it is still cheaper than actually producing it right from Jump Street. And that goes for GM as well as Ford.
And I think in a lot of cases, they know that what these problems are before they even release these vehicles. I can't remember what it was, like a Ford. Maybe it was a Ford Escape years ago or what. They released a new vehicle with a known problem, and whenever they sold it, they said, "This is the problem. We currently don't have a fix for it, but we're working on it." Yeah.
But so buy it anyway.
Yeah, so I think, too, it actually gives these manufacturers time. They know they're going to have to recall it, but it gives them time to figure out what the actual fix is and what's going to be the cheapest fix for them to go. Hopefully, it's just a software issue, but when you have rods being thrown through the side of engine blocks, it's probably going to be a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not an over-the-air software repair. But, maybe you send some guy out with that Flex Seal or whatever it is, and they can just cover up that hole.
Just do the spray like in the commercial. Yeah, right on the engine block. That'll fix it. Fix it.
Why wouldn't that work?
I wonder when these rods get launched through the engine block, what damage is on the other side? Because, I mean, that's thick metal that is getting launched through. Is it stopping after it goes to the hole, or is it just keep going? Is this just like a bullet that's going through the side of the car?
Well, I would imagine that it can create many ancillary issues, let's just say.
Imagine the sound when it happens. It's got to be like a bomb going off in front of you when you're driving one of these things at 70 miles an hour down the interstate.
Yes. And at that point, you might be cursing Ford or GM. But prior to that, hey, everything's A-okay. Nothing to worry about here.
I want to get back to these Broncos. These Broncos just they blow me away because you have something that was so hot when it came out. Yes. Talking about the Ford Broncos, they were putting market adjustments. Was there ever a scenario that you dealt with a vehicle that was so niche that you had tons of people that wanted it right at release. And then after all those people bought it, it was like no one wanted it after that first wave. Did you ever have a vehicle with that scenario?
I can't say that I have. I don't remember one quite like that, where people were just lined up. They put their $100 deposit down to order one, to get a reservation. I'm trying to think. I can't really think of anything at Mini when I was with Mini.
I got a vehicle that probably fits that vein, though. Let's see here. The PT Cruiser. You remember when that thing came out? Oh man, everybody wanted one of those things, and maybe they sold through and they did well. Because I can tell you right now, honestly, if we see a PT Cruiser that has decent miles on it, we try to buy it because we sell them as soon as we get them. I don't know what the love is behind a PT Cruiser, but that's one of the ugliest vehicles that I've ever seen in my life.
Well, but I wasn't representing that brand anywhere. When I think back in my career, I was at Acura for a long, long time, and think about it. I can think of vehicles that they came out with that unfortunately nobody wanted to buy. The ZDX, when it was a gas powered vehicle, is one that I could think of. The RL, when they redesigned it, was another one I could, where it was just the opposite. There was nobody coming in to even look at them, as opposed to what the Bronco was and what the Ford Lightning was when it was initially mentioned as, oh, you can put in a reservation and order one. So no, I've never been in that. I wasn't with Mazda when the Miata first came out. That was another one where there was, everybody was paying $5,000 over to get one of those.
The Jeep Gladiator falls into that same vein too, because people were going crazy over the Jeep Gladiator. I mean, it's a Jeep with a truck bed on the back of it. Yeah. Now Jeep can't give them away right now.
No, and but there was the longest time where they, at least the dealerships down here in the Atlantic City area and the South Jersey area, they were adding $5,000 and $10,000 dealer markups to every one of them, even as the inventory level of Gladiators was exponentially increasing on their lots. I mean, it was if they were in the back just making Gladiator babies. They were breeding on the lots, and yet they were still, every one of their addendum labels still had a $10,000 dealer markup on it.
Well, they were reproducing because they left the tailgates down. They shouldn't have done that.
That could be. That could be, yes.
All right, switch topics. All right, we talked about the Lincolns earlier. I want to show you this from that video. This is a Ford dealership. So see, Ford dealership, the Ford design, they had a Lincoln dealer that's right beside them.
Yes.
But they had so many Lincolns on that lot over there, they had to bring them over to the Ford dealership and park them in front of their Fords. So this was comical to me too. That you see all these Lincolns that are in front of the Ford. So you'll have to move all of these Lincolns right here to get any of these Ford Escapes out. And I don't understand what goes on at these dealerships. I talked to a salesperson there too, and they said that, okay, just about all the vehicles that are on that dealership, this was 2 weeks ago, I believe, just about everything on the dealership was 2024s, but they still had 2023s. They still haven't got their big shipments of 2025s yet. And this is a massive, I mean, you see massive volume dealer, right? 2024s everywhere. I would say 9 out of 10 of the cars that I checked on that lot were 2024s.
The last time I checked, this is February of 2025, isn't it? When I was with the Penske organization, come January 1st, I wasn't allowed to have any of the previous model year new cars left in inventory. So I to me, it just all boils down to inventory management. And you really have to know what your daily sales rate is for each model in your inventory and keep your inventory levels within reasonable daily sales rate goals. And when you see it becoming somewhat out of whack, like at that Ford dealership and that Lincoln dealership, and you're just stacking them deep. And obviously, you know, not necessarily selling them cheap, but just stacking them deep. As the new car manager or the new truck manager, you have to be looking at it and going, we can't accept any more allocations on Broncos, or we can't accept any more allocations on Corsairs or Nautiluses. I mean, you just you have to actively manage what your on hand and incoming inventory is, and you have to know it. And I would suggest at many dealerships, new car managers are not quite as in tune with their inventory levels as they should be, because if they were, they wouldn't allow themselves to get this deeply buried in their on hand inventory.
Yeah, and talking about like the big sales bump when they initially came out, the big body Broncos, had somebody ask about the sales numbers for the questions in the chat. I'm sorry, I should have pulled that up. But it says Ford sold about 109,000 Broncos in 2024 last year, and that's slightly up from what they did in 2023, but it's down from 2022. In 2022, they sold more Broncos than they did last year. That should not be the case because we had production problems in 2022, right? So this is showing you a big time example of a certain vehicle that was absolutely loved when it first came out. And then people are just like, no, we see them all everywhere now. I can give you another example of something that's similarly happening right now, and that's the Cybertruck.
Yeah. You know, I think what happens, and I think you mentioned this earlier, is the early adopters of those vehicles, they came in, they bought them, and that created the stir and the excitement, and that's what led the manufacturers to think that this is going to continue. But the issue is those who wanted already got, and the rest were kind of like blah towards those vehicles. And so the market wasn't as strong as what Tesla thought it would be for the Cybertruck, and Ford thought it would be for the Lightning and the Broncos. So every now and then you guess wrong. And, you know, those are three cases where they guessed wrong, because Cybertrucks are sitting at the moment. You know, I guess there's only so many people that want to drive something that ugly. And I know people get mad at me when I say that, but
all right, we'll end with that comment. We'll go to the next thing. You want to talk about Toyota for a little bit?
Whatever. Hey, I'm good.
All right. Let's see here. See if I remember how to do this. All right, Ray, check this dealership out right here. Look at all these Tundras, all these Tacomas sitting on this Toyota lot. This is back from summertime where I'm so bad at this. Let's start that over. My goodness. All right. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right, Ray, check out this Toyota dealership right here. So see all these Tundras, all these Tacomas. I didn't even start the effing video from the beginning. My goodness. All right.
Take three, ladies and gentlemen.
Take three. All right. Let's see here. All right. Give me a second. Brandon, why do you have to be so good at editing the video before I get into here? This is good for TV. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
All right, Ray, check this out. Check this Toyota dealership. All these Tundras, all these Tacomas sitting at this Toyota lot. So we've had this situation where we've had tons of Tundras, tons of Toyota Tacomas sitting around a lot of these dealer lots. And we have more problems that are coming out of Toyota where you have these Tacomas that are now getting recalled. And it seems like an ongoing theme with a lot of these car brands. But recently, Toyota's had some big problems. We've had some big problems with the Tundras, with their motors. Mm-hmm. And now you're having problems with the Tacomas. And what it's creating is this perception with the consumer, whether it's true or not, that, okay, these trucks are garbage because they used to be great at Toyota. And now we're having a bunch of these issues. And it's creating this problem at a lot of these dealerships where a lot of these Tacomas, a lot of these Tundras are stacking up. How is Toyota going to really combat this when they're getting this persona or of having problems with their trucks?
For the longest time, they were like the gold standard of, you knew if you bought a Toyota that you were buying a quality vehicle, and that's why people adored their Toyotas. That's why they had such brand loyalty. That's why they were such sought after vehicles as used vehicles. And suddenly, in the last couple of years, they have run into some major issues. I mean, it was 100,000 engines on the Tundras, if I'm not mistaken, that need to be replaced because there were metal shavings in the cylinder heads and the blocks. I mean, that's not good for engine life, number one. And now you're having brake fluid issues on the Tacomas. It's just it is giving more people more pause about Toyota and where they're headed quality wise. Have they grown so large, and are they producing so many vehicles that there is no way for them to produce them in with the quality that they could when they were producing fewer vehicles? So it's a real conundrum. I would think that there's enough people out there to continue to support the brand moving forward because of their previous history, that they'll still be all right. But I think it impacts some potential future sales when they continue to have some of the issues that they're having.
Well, I can tell you that it's affecting the dealers right now. This Tundra right here, and I've seen a lot at these dealerships that I've gone to, reduced by $6,000. And that's coming off. And when I went there, when I was talking to the salespeople, they were like, "Yeah, you want to buy one of these trucks? We'll give you one free if you just buy one of them." I mean, they were joking, obviously, but they were saying that they were moving big time off of the Tundra prices, off the Tacoma prices, because they were overloaded. There was even a sign on this dealership saying, "Okay, we got more new inventory in the back." They filled up their whole front inventory. They didn't have any RAV4s. They didn't have any Corollas or Camrys at the time. What they had was Tundras and Tacomas and a few 4Runners. But they were just absolutely stacked with these things. And it was a dealership whose owner owns a racetrack that's close to me too. And in front of their racetrack, they also had lots of Tundras, brand new Tundras, just sitting there. So they had these trucks sitting absolutely everywhere. And when I talked to the salesman, I said, "Okay, what I'm guessing is that the motors, the recalls, stuff like that is creating a environment where it's very difficult for you to sell one of these trucks." And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And these new trucks that were coming out, it's like the problem's been solved. It's not even an issue in here. But what we have to answer every single day when we're talking to these consumers, we have to say, "Look, those motor problems, they were from last year. They were from the year before that. They fixed them now." But it creates a dialogue that the salesperson has to have with the consumer to get them to tell them, like, this is not an issue anymore. But even though that's coming from a salesperson, right? So if they're talking, they're lying, right? So we're not going to believe anything that they're saying from a consumer standpoint.
I have heard through the course of my life that if a salesperson's lips were moving, they were lying. I've heard that. Conversely, I've heard from a salesperson's point of view, if the customer's lips are moving, they were lying. So, but the problem is, as you describe it, is these are Toyota salespeople that really haven't had to confront this issue in the past. Okay, where the customers were coming in and they had heard about engine replacements, and is that still an issue? And the other thing that I think hurts Toyota above and beyond any quality issues is the price of some of these vehicles. I mean, Tundras are $70,000, $80,000. The Tacomas are expensive today. It is not as if Toyota is as inexpensive a brand as it had been in the past. And so if you combine some quality issues with the fact that the prices have gone up as much as they have, then yeah, stuff begins to sit because there's just not enough consumers out there that feel as if they can afford to participate. And that impacts Toyota more than most other brands, especially with the trucks. They're expensive. They ain't cheap.
Yeah, and this right here was just for the one of the lower level trim Tacomas, and you're at $50,000
Yeah.
for a Tacoma. I mean, that's ridiculous for a smaller truck. I mean, it used to be that your higher level trim, like F-150s, even your Tundras or something, they were $50,000. But
Yeah.
now, just like you're saying, I mean, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 for an upper level trim. It almost, and then you add in the motor problems on top of that. Who's buying that? I don't. They're not going to be able to sell them.
Ultimately they'll be able to sell them, but they're not going to be able to sell them at anywhere near the asking price, as suggested by Toyota. So you just know that there's going to be large discounts that will become available, and greater incentives from Toyota in order to encourage people to say yes. And as we know, a customer won't say yes until they feel as if the value of what it is they're buying has exceeded the price they're asked to pay for it. And right now, at the pricing that Toyota's at on some of these vehicles, customers are sitting on the sidelines because they don't feel as if the value's anywhere near those prices that they're being asked to pay. So we're going to see deals.
So, and we talked about the ones that are on dealer lots and the motor issues and the scares that customers are having. It seems like NHTSA has been very, very busy over the last couple of months. But let's get back into how we really started this. But Toyota is recalling 106,000 Tacoma pickup trucks in the U.S. over a brake fluid leak. The last time I checked, brakes are pretty important.
Yes.
And I think you're going to need those to drive. But see, we're having NHTSA that's getting involved with all these. We talked about GM a lot about their motors. Tundras, big time with motors, where they can just implode on themselves, makes the vehicle stop. But there are a lot of safety issues that come along, and especially whenever these probes come in, these investigations come in, it's a pretty big deal, because that it's going to make these recalls happen a lot faster when you have safety concerns involved. We see that with GM. I feel like we're going to have a recall pretty quickly, all these GM motors, because of the danger that it actually can cause while you're driving it. And Toyota with their brakes, they're already dealing motors, now brakes too. It's going to be the same situation.
I know that many of the recalls that many manufacturers have faced have been software related and can be handled through over-the-air updates. But when you're talking about brakes and engines and things of that nature, those aren't the type of things that can be fixed over the air. And so it gives people pause when they're thinking about buying some of these things, because you just get the sense from all the manufacturers that the quality today isn't anywhere near what the quality had been in the past. That shortcuts have been taken. And the concept is, well, we'll worry about it when the stuff starts to break, as opposed to let's worry about it before it ever breaks. Let's just build it right. So part of it is this desire to get things out much more quickly than we had in the past, and manufacturers have put aside the need to make sure that what they're producing will actually work as it is intended to work for, I don't know, something longer than 3 years and 36,000 miles.
And this defect actually came from, and well, there's the poster child of recalls right there
Yeah,
on the on the
yeah.
screen. This is a Toyota article, but they have Jim Farley there. It's good. But it said that the clearance between the rear brake hose and the wheel may allow mud or dirt to build up there. So this is a design problem. This is not necessarily from rush quality or whatever. This is
Mhm.
from the actual. This was pre-production issue, but we're seeing a lot of post-production issues too with quality. Do you feel like the quality of vehicles, the amount of recalls that are coming, do you feel like it's more now than it used to be? You were in the car market, for 30 years. Do you feel
More.
like there are more recalls throughout the years when you were working, or is it more concentrated now?
Well, there's always been recalls, but it seems it seems as if they just happen way more often today. But there were situations with General Motors and Ford where there were issues for years before um, the vehicles were ever recalled. So it's we just hear about it more today. There seems to be a greater frequency that impacts a larger number of vehicles every year. Um, and I think it's just part and parcel of our rushed society where everybody's in a hurry to get stuff done. I mean, if on that Toyota with the brake fluid issue is a design issue, well, you would think in the past that maybe they would have discovered that in pre-production or in post-production, and they could have handled it before they went into mass production. You would think that you would understand what the clearances would need to be in order to prevent the mud and dirt from building up in those areas. You'd think you'd understand that and know that just as you were designing it. You know what it's like on your other vehicles, what it takes. So why wouldn't you be able to expect it to be the same on your new stuff?
Do you feel like the size of these recalls is getting a little bit worse? I mean, it's might be a recent bias for me, but we have Toyota that's had motor problems. We've had GM now that's dealing with motor problems. We
Yeah,
had Honda that had some recalls on a bunch of motors. I mean, Ford and Ram, they always have
everybody.
recalls on motors. It seems like those are big replacements because they're actually replacing the whole motors. I don't remember a time when we've had. I mean, I've only been doing it 13 years now. Well, 14 years now. My goodness, I'm getting old. But where you're having like multiple companies with models that are having whole engines that are being replaced.
Yeah, I don't recall that happening. I recall transmission issues where you put the vehicle in park and yet it was still in reverse. Things like that. But I really don't recall as many engine issues as what we seem to be seeing today.
Yeah, it seems like there's always airbag or brake
Well,
recalls all the time
the
throughout the
airbag
years.
recalls. I mean,
Yeah.
let's face it. There were so many vehicles that were impacted by that, and there were so many vehicles that were recalled that were never taken in for the fix, and never will be taken in for the fix. So it's much cheaper for the manufacturer because I don't know what the exact number is, but the bean counters the actuarials would know that when you have a recall, what the percentage of people who are informed of the recall actually show up and take care of the recall. And my guess is that there's a rather large percentage of people that never bring the vehicle back for the recall, which is what allows them to figure out dollars and cents wise. It makes more sense for us to do it as a recall than to perfect the parts integrities and things of that nature prior to selling the vehicle.
And do you feel like with Toyota's their history, do you feel like these recalls recently, the Tundra, do you think they have actually taken a hit, or do you think they built such a reputation where they're still just going to be all these Toyota buyers and they're just buying Toyota no matter what?
I think there's a large percentage of people that have had Toyotas that will always remain Toyota buyers. There's some that have considered Toyota in the past that might not consider it in the future because of the recalls. It's going to have some impact. As to how large an impact, will it be significant? Will it prevent them from continuing to grow as a manufacturer? I doubt it. They survived all the issues that they've had in Japan with their Hino trucks and Daihatsus that they've had issues with there. They still sold almost 12 million cars last year. So will it impact them? Sure. But when you sell as many cars as they do, the impact will be minimal.
I can tell you what is absolutely impacting is the used Tundras and the used Tacomas, because those Tundras that have the V8 motors in them and the Tacomas that had that V6, they're going to the absolute moon right now, because there are people out there that don't want the 6-cylinder turbos. They don't want the 4-cylinder turbos. They want the V6. They want the V8. And those trucks are just they're going to be crazy for years. Because I don't see the Tacoma coming back anytime soon with the V8.
Yeah, those older ones are considered bulletproof, and the new ones are anything but. So yeah, there's a certain amount of 4-cylinder hate when it comes to pickup trucks, and I understand it. I get it. It depends how you're really planning on using your pickup truck. If you're actually using it for work and carrying a lot of weight and stuff, it might not be the way to go. If you're just using it as a passenger vehicle, I think there's enough proven good 4-cylinder engines out there that it shouldn't be an issue. But most truck buyers don't want to have a turbo engine. They want to have a good quality V6 or a V8, and they're not excited by a 4-cylinder or a 4-cylinder turbo. I get it.
Yeah, I completely understand, because I don't even if it did put out the same amount of power and everything and it sounded the same, there's still more stuff. If you have a turbo in your vehicle, there's still more stuff to go wrong in it down the road. I want the fewest amount of moving parts in my vehicle as possible.
Well, it sounds to me like you want an electric vehicle, or
that one.
Yeah, or a blast from the past, a rotary engine, a Wankel engine from a Mazda. Because the thing that was supposed to make the Wankel rotary engine a better choice was fewer moving parts.
I can tell you what I do have, which I'm excited about getting on the road again. I've got the very first vehicle that I ever bid on at an auction. It's a 1991 GMC Blazer.
Okay.
No, it's a. Would it be a GMC Blazer? It's whatever. It's a GMC. Yeah, but I think it's got to be a Chevy then if it's a Blazer. But I've got that, and it's got the perfect interior on it. It's a 1991. It's got power seats in it.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And power windows, and I sat around forever. I bid on it at an auction, and 14 years ago, it might have been 15 years ago at this point, because this was even before I was dealing cars. I took like $1,000 to the auction, and I hit it at $950. And then it went to $1,050, and I didn't have the money for it, so I got off of it. My grandfather ended up buying it. He was a car dealer.
Yes.
And he sold it to my uncle. But my uncle a couple years ago passed away, and it was given back to my grandfather, and then my grandfather gave it to me because he knew it was the very first car I ever raised my hand on. But that's a project I want to work on too. But there's not a lot of moving parts in that thing. Yeah, there's more electrical under the seat than there is anywhere else in the whole vehicle.
Well, you'll have to keep us updated as to the progress you make.
Yeah, hopefully we've got a new space that we're working on right now that I can actually put some cars behind me while I'm doing these. So hopefully I'll be able to have it sitting behind me in the near future to be able to show it to you.
Oh, very cool.
Yep. All right, you want to change your battery?
Yeah, I guess we're at that point, aren't we?
We're at that point. All right, and I had a question for me. Let's go to this. How do I get the questions? There we go. Kyler's always asking about a Christmas tree. Yes, I still have my Christmas tree up, and as far as I'm concerned, it will not be taken down unless my wife takes it down herself, because I want to leave it up all year round, and I will be sad when she takes it down. I would assume she'll probably take it down in a month or so. That's usually when she gets fed up with it and takes it down. But I love having the Christmas tree up. I like the lighting that it has. But that's I had one up almost all year round when we were doing lives and stuff back at my car dealership before we put the studio back in my house. But yeah, that's where this question comes from. If you're curious. And Ray is already back.
I don't. My Christmas tree. Wait, I never had a Christmas tree.
Yeah, you have a.
Yeah.
You have the Jewish tree up. What's the Jewish tree?
The menorah.
A menorah.
That's called a Hanukkah bush. You can go out and get a Hanukkah bush instead of a Christmas tree.
Do you decorate a Hanukkah bush?
I don't know. I've never had a Hanukkah bush.
Okay. All right. I want to find. Yeah, let's do this right here. I want to find some Jeep vehicles because we're about to talk about the thing that you don't want to talk about.
Would that be Stellantis?
That would be Stellantis. And here we go. We can start it off like this. Actually, I gotta see the article that I want to. You can see how prepared I am for this show today.
You are thoroughly prepared.
Stellantis brand strategies take shape after Carlos Tavares exit. That's what we're going to be talking about. So I want to lead with this right here. All right, Ray, check this out. I want you to see this Ram dealer right here. All these vehicles sitting everywhere at these dealerships right now. And it seems like right now we're still having a hard time moving a lot of these vehicles, even though we got the CEO out. But we've had some articles come out saying about some of the transformation that Stellantis is going to have since we have their CEO's exit. But is it a little too late right now for a lot of these dealers? And I can't imagine what they would even implement right now. We've seen advertisements of buy a Grand Wagoneer and get a free Jeep Compass. Yes. And we're still seeing vehicles not move. What do they have to do? It seems like the easy answer is lower the freaking price. But if not, just give them another Jeep for free that they don't want.
That maybe it's buy one, get two. I don't know. Because if buy one, get one isn't working, then maybe you have to think along the lines of buy one, get two. I don't know. We do know that the brands moving forward are going to be going in a much different direction than what they had been planning on doing when Carlos Tavares was still the CEO. I mean, they are making major adjustments and changes to what their thinking was. They won't be relying on EVs quite as much at any of their brands moving forward. They want to keep the option of ICE and hybrid and plug-in hybrid available for a much longer period of time. So we'll see what happens. They seem to be making some headway according to some stats that you see. Is it enough? Only time will tell.
Yeah.
I do have a
So
question for you, though.
yeah, go.
Is it just in the Charlotte market where every dealer is overstocked with cars? Is it the Charlotte folks just aren't buying new cars? Is that what it is?
So I know that I watch a lot of other people that have started doing the same kind of videos that I do for some reason. I guess they know that it works because they can see me do it and it works. But they're all across the country. I see a bunch in California. I see a bunch in the Midwest where all of these dealerships are. You would think that someone like me who's going to these dealerships talking about
Yeah.
earnings and stuff, I'm cherry picking these dealers. I'm not. I'm every Ford dealership that's around me has a surplus of F-150s and Ford Broncos. Every Jeep, Dodge, Ram dealership has a ton of Gladiators near me. They have a bunch of Rams. You can see it in the days supply of the inventory that all these dealerships have, that all these brands have right now, keeps going up and up and up and up. Even when we have more incentives, we still have inventory that's continuously on the rise. I don't know where the ceiling is. I don't know if it's for Ford right now, it's 103 days. Where are they going to get to before they start getting into panic mode? Is 150 days? I don't know where the line is. What's the I don't know if did you ever keep up with the amount of days inventory at your dealerships? Is that a metric that you kept
Oh,
up with?
absolutely.
What's the highest that you've ever seen during the worst time?
Well, I don't know. I could have two RLs in stock at the Acura store, and I could have a year's supply. Um, so sometimes it's as ridiculous as that. But yeah, absolutely. That's the metric that you live by if you're managing your inventory. Is you want to match your inventory level to what your daily sales rate is for each model. Um, so, what's the point where the manufacturer starts to get concerned? Well, you could say it's Stellantis. That I guess that number was when it kind of sort of was inching closer and closer to a 200-day supply of vehicles, where the dealers were choked and couldn't take any more, and were turning down allocations. The manufacturer's sales reps were begging dealers that were choking to take more, that literally they didn't have room to take more. So I think when you start approaching those levels, that's where, as a manufacturer, you have to do something about it. And I believe it was in the third quarter where Stellantis came out with programs where they said, we have to reduce over the next 90 days, we have to reduce the dealership on hand inventory levels by 100,000 vehicles. Well, that's a hell of a task. Now, allegedly, they say they did it, but you can still find way too many of all the Stellantis products at every one of the Stellantis dealers. But how did they do it? There were times when they were advertising 15% off from the manufacturer, before you even said hello. Seriously. And 0% finance rates and things like that, and not just for 36 months, but for 60 and 72 months. So yeah, I think as you start to approach a 200-day supply of vehicles, you start to really think about how it is you need to impact that, and what it's going to take to actually impact that. And we know Stellantis has impacted the number. We also know that customers are still complaining that their prices are way too high, even with all the incentives. So they need to find a middle ground. Obviously, I think that's what they're trying to work on.
So, do you know recently where Stellantis's days of inventory? I don't know if you and Zach have covered it recently for Jeep or Ram. Know
Yeah,
where
it's
it's at?
been in excess of 150 days.
Yeah, so this is what I'm talking about. So there's two brands that let me pull back out. There's two brands that
Yeah.
I know of that have been in quote unquote emergency mode. Nissan has actually used the term the CEO
Yeah.
has said we are in emergency mode. We have to do something. Stellantis CEO's out. Everything that they're saying from the company, we are in emergency mode. We've got to do something. So when you have those two companies that are doing that, you can see a lot more stuff like this, where you have a Jeep Gladiator, they're dollars under MSRP on the internet. And traditionally, what would happen is you wouldn't see advertisements like that come across through the car market. What you would have to do is you have to go to the store, talk to the freaking salesman, and then you can get the money off there. Now, there's going to be some particular models where they're going to advertise a little bit off MSRP or whatever. But if you want to get the best deal, not you're traditionally not going to see $6,000 off MSRP advertised. So that means you can go to that dealership and you're going to be able to get more than that off of it. So something like a Jeep Gladiator, they are in absolute panic mode if they're taking $6,000 off MSRP. This one's $10,000 off MSRP before you even walk into the door. Now, on top of that, you're going to have some rebates. You're going to have some kind of special interest rate. You're going to be able to go. They are trying to move metal right now, and this is a situation that both Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Nissan are going to have to work through. And it's something that they might not be able to really solve, at least in the next year, in the next 2 years, because they've put themselves in a position that they're in right now anyway.
You know, it's almost like if you're a salesman at one of those stores and a customer walks in and you greet them and you go, "Hi, I'm $10,000 off. I mean, oh, my name's Ray. I can get you at least $10,000 off on anything you're looking at." You know, and that's as a salesperson, that's a hell of a way to have to start the conversation. You know, I used to have a salesperson that worked for me, and literally he would introduce himself, and basically the next line out of his mouth was, "If I can get you the vehicle, including taxes, tags, and all fees for MSRP, do we have a deal?" We haven't figured out what car they're on yet, but you know, that's basically where we're at. It's like, "Hi, my name's Ray, and I can get you at least 10 grand off. What vehicle would you like to look at?" And you know, as a salesperson that gets paid off of gross profit, that's a hell of a way to start. Um, you know, and I see in comments oftentimes, you know, you're always giving customers ways to save money, and as a salesperson, nobody wants to work for free. You know, I hate working for a Mini. You know, I spend 3 hours so I can make $100 or whatever it is. The only thing I can say to those salespeople, and this is what I used to say to my customers, is think of yourself as a potato farmer. And your job as that potato farmer is to fill a bushel basket with potatoes at the end of the month. So if you're a salesperson, your job is to fill that bushel basket with as many potatoes as you can. And in some cases, in a lot of cases, in stores where they're overstocked, there's going to be a poop ton of small potatoes. Okay, and that'll be deals that just are going to be minis. You're not going to be making any real money on them. And then
define what a mini is. Not everyone here has been in the car industry. Yeah,
a mini is that the gross profit is so low that the salesperson might get paid $100. That's the minimum commission that they could get paid for selling a car. You know, typically they get a percentage of the gross profit. So they could sell a car, they might lose money, the dealership might lose money, but the salesperson's still going to get paid $100 for his efforts. That's what's known as a mini. So if you're filling that bushel basket with potatoes, and they're small potatoes, those represent your mini deals that you're not making a lot of money on. So that means you need to find some deals that are going to have some medium-sized potatoes and some deals that have big ass potatoes, so that you can average out to getting much more than $100 commission per car. But you have to look at it as your job is to fill that damn bushel basket. And sometimes it's going to be minis. Sometimes it's going to be small potatoes. And I used to tell that to my customers. I have to fill this. My job is to make sure this bushel basket's filled with potatoes at the end of the month. If it's okay with you, you could be a small potato. Will that work for you? And they go, well, what does that mean? I said, we're not going to make a lot of money. Will that work for you? Okay, I'm in on that. So that's how salespeople have to think. And there's going to be customers that come in that will unknowingly allow you to make money, to make a nice profit that you're going to get paid a commission on.
So I've now been a car dealer for it's got to be 14 years at this point. I've been saying 13 years, I think, for over a year now. So it's got to be 14 years at this point.
Okay.
But I've never worked at a bigger franchise dealer. I've never worked at a dealership. I've never been a salesperson. And even my dealership, we've never worked on commission. You're talking about minis, the minimum that these salespeople can make. Is there a maximum? Does it get cut off at a certain point?
Well, does it get cut off at a certain point? Here's how I would describe it to you.
Just before you get this question, just the reason, because I would think that traditionally it wouldn't matter, but I'm thinking about over the last couple years where you can have a vehicle that a customer paid $30,000 over MSRP. Does the franchise then cut the commission that
many dealerships did? Yes,
yeah.
I would say to you, if I was the dealer principal, if I was the general manager, if I was the sales manager, I would pay my salespeople whatever it is that they earned off of the profit. And you know, if, for instance, if you under allowed and a salesperson is working on selling a car, the customer has a trade-in. The used car manager appraises the trade and says the trade is worth $10,000. The salesperson goes out and says to the customer, great news, I was able to get you $6,000 for your trade-in. Used car manager said it's worth 10. Okay. The customer doesn't know, and they go, oh, we're so glad you were able to get us that much. So the salesperson only gives them $10,000. That's a $4,000 under allowance. Okay. That's $4,000 in extra profit that the salesperson would get paid on. I wouldn't cheat them out of a penny of that. Now, during the pandemic, when every dealer was charging $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 over, most of those dealers weren't paying their salespeople on any of the extra profit from the market adjustments. Okay, they would pay the salesperson what the gross profit was from invoice cost to the selling to the MSRP, but that market adjustment above that, they weren't paying the salespeople on that at a lot of dealerships. Well, if the salesperson was good enough to convince the customer to pay it, then as the owner, you should be good enough to give him his commission on that. Because just between you and me, the owner didn't have his ass out there trying to do it. Okay? The owner had his salesperson out there doing it. So if the salesperson got him to say yes, pay him. Okay? But a lot of dealerships, they did not. So they would cap how much you could get paid on certain vehicles.
Yeah, of course they did. They're going to screw the customer. They're going to screw their employee. They're going to screw their managers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I get
it. The doc fee is another. It screws the salespeople and the managers because nobody participates in the doc fee other than the owner. That doesn't get for payroll purposes. That doesn't count as profit for the dealership that the general manager would get paid off of, or the sales manager. So yeah, I mean, lots of dealers figure out ways to make sure they don't pay their employees what they should.
And talking about salespeople, I can tell you something that I've noticed because I've been going to these dealerships now for, oh my goodness, how long have I been on YouTube? 2.5 years now, 3 years, forever. Going to these dealerships, and I noticed the big difference between the I won't say predatory nature, but the aggressiveness of the salespeople. Because I would go a year and a half ago, 2 years onto these dealerships, I wouldn't get approached by a soul. There wouldn't be. I could be out there for an hour, hour and a half, because I used to be really bad at recording these videos, so it would take me forever to get a 10-minute video out. I would stumble over my words, so I'd be at the dealership forever, just walking around trying to think of what I was going to see. I can do it now in 15 minutes, no problem. But I get approached in the 15 minutes that I do it now, 10x more than I got approached for the hour and a half that I was at the dealership a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So I can tell just from me being on these dealership lots that salespeople are getting more desperate. It's like they can't just sit in the sales floor and wait for that consumer to come in and say, I'll take it. They actually have to go to work now. And that's something that I think there's probably going to be even more turnaround at the sales position. And when you have more turnaround at the sales positions now, because it's not as easy as it used to be, you're going to have probably salespeople that are really eager in the beginning, and then they just leave because it's so hard to sell a car right now.
It is, salespeople during the pandemic. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. Okay, and so what did they learn to say? Well, either you buy it or the person standing behind you will. Well, that's
or supply and demand when they're negotiating.
Yeah, that's not selling. That's not creating any value for the customer. That's like, hey, you pay me extra and I'll do you the favor and let you pay me. Otherwise, I'm not interested. Well, those people now have to relearn the art of selling. Okay, you have to now learn how to overcome objections from customers. You have to learn how to read people again. You have to figure out what's important to your customers again, so that you can tailor your presentation and your demonstration to what it is that is their hot button, not just you regurgitating facts and figures. So a lot of these salespeople have had to relearn their craft. And then a lot of new ones that come in that come into dealerships that are overstocked with stuff, and they don't know, these salespeople don't know what they're doing, and they spend 5, 6, 7 hours selling somebody a car so that they can make that minimum $100 commission. And they start looking at the amount of time that they put in at the dealership at 50, 60, 70 hours a week, to be making $300 and $400. They start to have second thoughts about what it is that they're doing. And so, the manager has a placeholder in the newspaper. In the old days, we used to call them placeholders in the newspaper to keep your advertising rates lower. And you always had a help wanted ad running in the classified. But, whether it be whatever job sites there are, Indeed, Monster, I don't know, whatever they are today. Thankfully, I don't need to use it because I ain't looking for work. But a lot of these dealerships probably have constant ads looking for salespeople running all the time, because who the hell wants to work 60 hours a week to make $400 or $500?
I got a question for you. So you've managed many sleazy salesmen over your years in the business. Was there ever a situation where you had a salesperson that was just too sleazy and you had to sit him down and like, dude, just stop being so sleazy? Was there ever a situation where you had salespeople that were doing things that just anything to get a sale, and you had to literally sit them down as their sales manager and say, dude, you got to stop doing this.
Well, no, I would sit them down and say, you can continue doing this, just not here. Okay. If I caught you doing stuff that you shouldn't have been doing, if I caught you lying to the customer or promising things to a customer that you knew we couldn't do or wouldn't do, then I would. I hate to be so callous, but I would boot your ass right out of the store. One of the things that I did at when I was with the Penske organization at the Acura store there in North Scottsdale, at the Scottsdale 101 Auto Collection, is I gave each of my salespeople $500 a month that they could utilize. It was free money that they could utilize towards keeping customers happy, so that if somebody they sold a car to came in and they had an issue or a problem and they wanted to take care of that issue or the problem, they didn't have to come to a manager to do it. They could just utilize their $500 monthly account that they had that was intended for customer satisfaction. Now, you couldn't be the salesperson and say, just come back tomorrow and I'll get you that set of floor mats. That didn't work, okay? You couldn't use it like that. But if the customer came back and there was a legitimate issue, they were empowered to spend the money to keep the customer happy. So I always tried to keep it on the up and up. I wanted everything disclosed. For instance, if a customer was looking at a used car and the tires were so-so, and the customer said to the salesperson, "Sure, those tires are so-so," and the salesperson said, "Don't worry about it. I'll get that handled for you." Now, the salesperson would tell me, "I never promised them new tires." Well, when you said, "Don't worry about it, I'll get that handled for you," what the customer heard was, "You're going to get me new tires." So when those situations would arise, it was real simple. I gave the customer new tires. Now, the salesperson would complain and go, "But I never really promised them that." Well, you did. You just didn't think you did. And so it's coming out of your end. It's coming out of the gross profit that you're going to get paid for. And if this was a continuing situation that we would have, you weren't working there anymore. It's, you just have to deal straight with A, your managers, B, your customers. It's so much easier when you just tell the truth. There's so little to remember when you just tell the truth. If you lie to the customer, you have to remember that lie forever in case that customer ever comes back. So just tell the truth. When a customer says, "Can you do this?" and you can't, but you're somewhat ambivalent about it, no, just say, I would love to be able to help you, but this is not one of those situations where I'll be able to. Be upfront. It's not that hard. Well, I say that. Apparently it is for a lot of salespeople, because there are some sleazy salespeople out there. Okay, maybe more than some.
Yeah, there's a few more than some. This is one of the big reasons why I'm so proud of myself for always paying my sales staff a salary and never doing commission or anything like that. I feel like commission at the end of the day, commission is set up to be a good way to have overperformers get overpaid. That's a great thing to do. I love what is supposed to happen, but what typically happens, no matter if you're looking at the car market, you're looking at any other industry, commission brings out a lot of the bad eggs, and it happens very quickly because people are greedy. They want to make as much money as possible, and they're going to say whatever they can say to the customer to make the sale to be able to get. I remember working I worked at Sears forever ago, and we sold TVs. I was in the electronics department, and we were paid on commission. And I remember even then there were guys that would sell TVs and tell the customer it comes with a free 5-year warranty or something that was not even close to truthful, to try to sell some of these electronics, and they were only making like $25 a TV or something. It's outstanding how little money people will sell their souls for, or just lie to a customer, and not even feel anything about it. It blows me away.
It's almost as if everyone has a price. Okay. At what price would it take to get you to lie, cheat, and steal? Well, I don't know my price, but it would be a lot. It'd have to be a lot of money, because I believe in not lying, cheating, and stealing. There are others out there that it's next to nothing. It could be a $5 lunch ticket. So I mean, I could tell you stories. I know of a salesperson that used to work in the Atlantic City area years and years and years ago, where he would tell people that the payment was for 48 months. And he'd have them sign a contract for 60 months. And this was in the old days where the bank would literally send you a payment book with 60 payment stubs in there. And his customers would come back and they'd say, "You told me this was a 48-month loan, and it's a 60-month loan. Look at this. I got my payment book. There's 60 payment slips in there." And he would go to the back and he'd say, "Oh, that damn bank made another mistake." And he'd rip out the last 12 payments. Okay, the slips for the people to send in when they're, so he could just rip them out and go, "Here you go. It's only 48 months. That's what it was supposed to be." Well, the issue didn't rear its ugly head again for 4 years. So, he was figuring, either he'd be dead or he'd be working somewhere else, and he didn't care. I could never sell my soul like that. It's just, I used to tell people, if the truth is going to preclude us from making a deal, if me telling you the absolute truth is going to keep you from saying yes, so be it. I can live with that, because I don't want to lie to you to sell you something. I don't care what it is. I don't want to be the one to lie to you. If I can't build enough value in what I'm selling, if I can't give you enough reasonable logic to go ahead and do it, and I have to resort to making stuff up, I'm not going to do that. And if you insist that you want me to lie to you, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it. This is what it is. Either it works or it doesn't work. But if you want me to lie, I'm not. Now, I'm not going to say I was your normal salesperson and your normal manager, because I wasn't. Because there's many managers out there that can teach their sleaziest salespeople even sleazier ways of doing things. I was aware of the sleazy way of doing things. Didn't mean I would utilize them, but I was aware. I don't know. It's so much easier to sleep at night when you do it the right way. And one of the questions I used to always ask is, why is it so damn hard to do the right thing? It shouldn't be. We should all get rewards for doing the right thing and saying the right things. I used to tell my salesperson, if it's right, say it or do it. If it's wrong, don't say it or do it. And if you're not sure if it's right or wrong, err on the side of caution and don't do it or say it. Just tell the flipping truth. It's not that hard.
And I think the moral to that whole long ass story was, read your paperwork, people, whenever you're signing for a car.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's say you hit one more thing, then we'll get out of here.
Okay.
Go with that. All right. We got to make this like 25 minutes. All right.
Make me work for my money.
I was thinking we were going to go ahead and get off, but I think we can squeeze in one more video here.
Okay.
All right, Ray. So we have more dealerships and more manufacturers that are in trouble. We have Mercedes-Benz that are now going to do cost cutting across their whole space, and it's going to end up costing a lot of people their jobs. We know that it's no secret Mercedes is having a hard time selling their vehicles. We've had plant closures, we've had layoffs already, but now Mercedes-Benz is making an announcement that we're doing even more cuts. So it's very interesting to me that we've seen this golden age that has happened over the last 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden the spigot's been turned off. And now we're seeing cuts across the board. We see cuts at Ford, see cuts at Stellantis. We're seeing cuts at VW. Now we're seeing cuts Mercedes-Benz. We're seeing cuts at all of these manufacturers. And I think it's a warning for things to come that we're going to see more and more and more of this coming through the pipeline.
Well, I think as profits start to go down a little bit at most of these manufacturers, and you realize that they're going, or you just realize that because of circumstances beyond your control, profits are going to go down. At that point, you start to look at, well, we know we have waste. There isn't any major corporation out there that doesn't have waste. So now you start looking at, well, where's the waste? How much waste can we cut out? They're thinking at Mercedes, they got 30% waste. They want to figure out how to cut expenses by 30%. When you're making money hands over fist is actually when you should be looking at all that waste, but you don't because you're making money hands over fist. And when you realize, as you put it, that spigot is going to be turned off, that's when you start trying to look for all that waste. So they're looking at cutting global staff. They're looking at whatever ways they can to save money because, as I think they put it, they think they're going to be choppy times in the automotive space for the next year or two.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. They said Mercedes expects market choppiness for the next 2 to 3 years. And what they're going to do is with some of the departments expected to reduce their budgets up to 30%. I saw 25% across the board in another. But we're seeing this. And then we had GM and Ford that recently put out their earnings, and they said 2025 is not going to be good.
Yeah.
That's and very in a lot fewer words than what they said, but that's basically what they said. And we're going to see more cuts. We're going to see more dealerships that have cuts too, because as you get more vehicles on these dealer lots, well, they have a lot more money in expenses that they have to pay. Things that were profit centers, like a floor plan assistance, are now their floor plans are going to end up costing them a lot more money. And when you have these margins that are shrinking, when you have profits that are shrinking, when you have added expenses, then they're going to start looking for things that can go. And one of the easiest places, it's sad to say, but one of the easiest places to cut costs is by manpower. And it's one of the easiest things because they can put out an email. We've seen other companies do it. Okay, you think you got a job today? Well, tomorrow, I'm sorry, you don't have one. And we're doing layoffs in the form of either buyouts or companies will just say, okay, we just need you going.
In the famous terms of my former employer, Mr. Roger Penske, always refer to that as human capital. And when you're looking to reduce costs, you reduce your human capital. You take a closer look at staffing and you say, well, do we really need 6 porters? Can we get by with 5 porters or 4 porters on the lot? Do we really need 4 finance and insurance managers? Can we get by with 2 or 3? And so the first place manufacturers look at is the human side of things, their workforce. why do we have as many employees as we do? Do we really need this many employees? How many employees are duplicating the work of others so that we can cut back? And I believe that Mercedes-Benz is they're stating they want to reduce their global workforce by 20,000 people. That's 20,000 people globally that are now will have to look for a job in what will probably be a down job market, because if a lot of these companies are going to be reducing expenses through headcount, there's going to be a lot of unemployed people, qualified people in many cases, that are going to be battling with other qualified people for the few jobs that are out there. And the really sad part about this, from an employee perspective, is when there is an oversupply of qualified people for the position that you might have open, you don't have to pay them as well, because they might have been used to making $100,000 a year. You're only offering 75, and the reason you're offering 75 is because the next person in line will be desperate and will take the 75, because they figure they're better off having 75 than the 100. If they're better off having 75 than nothing. And so I think it's going to be difficult for a lot of people out there globally because of this. It's going to be difficult for these manufacturers to look at the various departments and decide how do we cut these expenses? Where do we cut these expenses? And it's not all going to be human capital, as Roger used to call it, but there'll be other ways that they look at through improved buying practices, renegotiating contracts with suppliers, whatever it is. If they want to find a 30% savings, it's going to come from renegotiations and downsizing of staffs.
And I want to point this out. So we're going to have some of this downsizing. We already have this downsizing happen with a lot of these companies. Now, what's going to happen when and if we get some of these tariffs to come in? We're going to have added costs that are going to get pumped up into these manufacturers. I think of specifically the big three, where you have a lot of their product coming out of Mexico. And we have Jim Farley here talking about Trump is creating cost and chaos. And what Ford has recently said on their earnings report is that, okay, they think 2025, one, is going to be bad, but also a big headwind are these potential tariffs that are coming into place. And it's not, Ford doesn't believe it's a matter of really if, it's a matter of when it's going to happen, whether it's 25%, whether or not Trump is bluffing or not. There's going to be some kind of added cost that is associated with tariffs that come into the system. And this is what Ford believes. And whenever you have, labor costs that could potentially go up because of these tariffs, because Ford has said that if we have these tariffs, they're going to have to reallocate where they're producing a lot of their vehicles. And that means their labor cost is going to go up because their allocation of workforce is going to go from Mexico to the U.S. U.S. workers just cost more. That's what happens with these auto manufacturers. When you have that added cost, you're going to have labor that is reduced, at least just on Ford's side. But you're going to have all of these auto manufacturers. It's been said in a lot of these articles that the auto industry is going to be the hardest hit by these tariffs if they come into place. And if that happens, you're going to have manufacturers that are going to be cutting labor across the board, in my opinion.
And here's the worst part about it. We already have and have had for the last 4 years or so an affordability crisis in America when it comes to automobiles and trucks and SUVs. They're already too expensive for the vast majority of people out there. Well, this is only going to make it worse. This isn't going to make it better. Okay, this is going to make it worse. Prices are going to go up. and there won't be a big enough cut in interest rates to offset the new cost of what these vehicles are going to be on a retail basis to make up for. I mean, it just won't. So the vehicle prices could go up if we see the tariffs imposed. The monthly payment will go up because the price went up. The average monthly payment on a new car today is $756. How much higher can it go before people just say, I can't afford that? I can't afford to pay $800 a month just for my car note, plus $175 a month for my insurance, plus $200 a month for my gasoline. I mean, there comes a point where fewer and fewer people will find themselves in a position to be a part of buying a new car. So jobs will be lost in many cases. Prices will go up in many cases, and the affordability issue will be exacerbated in many cases. A lot of the inexpensive cars that General Motors has are either built in Korea or China. And a lot of them are built in Mexico. So if there's tariffs, and we know there's a 10% tariff coming out of China right now on Chinese imports, that's going to impact the most affordable cars that GM offers at the moment. It's going to be an issue.
So here's a question, and I want to be nice to this person. I think they are misinformed, but they're asking, will making cars in the USA make them cheaper and better quality? I can tell you that right now, if manufacturers could make stuff cheaper in the U.S., and if they can make it better quality in the U.S., then they would already be doing that now. But the simple fact is that labor and everything else costs more money in the U.S. than it does anywhere else. So this is why you're having production in Mexico. This is why you're having parts come from overseas. This is why everything is made in China, right? Because everything costs less anywhere else to produce other than here. But even when you get these tariffs that come into place, it still might be a fact of life for a company like Ford, even though they're saying that they would have to move production. It still even might be cheaper for them to produce everything in Mexico than to hire any kind of labor force. And it could be that, yes, the best intentions of the tariffs is to have more workforce, more labor, more people that are being hired by these automotive companies in the U.S. But when you do that, everything is going to cost more. So no, if things are made in USA, they are not going to be cheaper. And in my opinion, the quality won't be any better than what it was being produced somewhere else. And there's a chance that the quality might even be worse because they would potentially be cutting more corners because their costs are so high. So they're going to look anywhere to have their costs reduced so they can keep their profit margins high. So you might get the situation where prices are higher and quality is worse if you bring all the labor into the U.S.
If the manufacturers have to produce more vehicles in the U.S., and they have to hire more employees, well, they're going to be entry-level, lower experienced employees at building cars. Typically quality improves when employees have been around for a while and they know what the hell they're doing. I'm trying to be nice, but I just I don't see either improving, much like you. I don't think the quality would necessarily go up because you could have more inexperienced workers.
And a lot of the quality problems is coming from the design. It's not necessarily coming from them putting the vehicle together.
Yeah. And then it costs more. American labor costs more than labor in Mexico or labor in Canada or labor in Japan or labor in Korea or labor in China. It costs more here than anywhere. So every if you had a business and you manufactured something, it is your duty as the owner of that business to find cheaper ways to get things done. And if that means that it's less expensive for you and more profitable for you to have what you need being built in Vietnam as opposed to being built in Champaign, Illinois, you're going to get it built in Vietnam. I mean, where do most clothes come from? They don't come from the U.S. anymore. So, whatever business you might be in, you're always looking for ways to reduce your costs, not increase your costs. And so it's been a globalized manufacturing world since the end of World War II. So, how do you change all that? How do you change 75 or 80 years worth of how things have been? I'm just not sure.
So if we get tariffs that come in, and let's say at some point it's probably going to be, I would guess you're getting 25% from Mexico and Canada. That would be my guess. I think it's being postponed for right now. Maybe it's a bluff, but there's going to be something that's added. But if we get a 25% tariff from Mexico, from Canada, and then we still have the overseas tariffs from Europe, from China that are coming. China's already in place, but we have other tariffs that are coming in place from all these other countries. What do you think? Which automotive company do you think has the most to lose with tariffs that are coming into place? Which automotive companies do you think may not survive when we have these added costs that are coming into the system?
That's a good question. And honestly, one that I don't really have an answer for. I mean, because every one of these manufacturers has, set up shop both in the United States. I mean, you look at BMW, they've got their facilities in South Carolina. Subaru and I think Toyota have facilities both in Indiana and Alabama. Every one of the major players has manufacturing facilities in the United States, but they also have manufacturing facilities throughout the world. And the reason is so that they can cost average is what it boils down to. They know it's more expensive for them to build it here. So in order to cost average, to keep their costs down, they build a percentage of what they sell here, and they build a percentage of what they sell in Mexico or in Korea or wherever. I mean, it's all to cost average. And so I think, it probably impacts them all just about equally, because you look around, every one of these manufacturers has facilities to produce vehicles on every continent. Okay, it's German cars aren't just built in Germany. Many are built here. Many are built in South America. I'm sure there's some that are built in Africa. So it could just. I don't know what the answer is.
If I had to answer that question, I would say Nissan. Nissan would be my number one, that they can't survive any added costs and they can't survive any increase to their prices that they already had. They're already not selling at the price point that they're at. They're already not making the money they need to make. They're already in panic mode. They're already in emergency mode, whatever you want to call it. They're already trying to find a bailout from somewhere else. Who on earth knows why they would back out from any kind of agreement with Honda? That doesn't make any sense.
They didn't want to be a subsidiary. They want to be an equal. And that's great when you are an equal. But
when you got money, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you don't have that money, you're not an equal. You are subservient to the larger corporation that actually has the money that and the wherewithal to take you in. So at a certain point, you would think the good folks at Nissan would put their egos aside. But, like I said, Foxconn is looking at them, and so maybe their pitch will you get a free iPhone with every Nissan that you buy.
So before there was even tariff talk, Nissan was 12 to 16 months of cash left. Allegedly. And now if we're going to add tariffs on top of that, I mean, take that down another 4 to 6 months, we're in trouble.
Yeah, they're in trouble. They were one of the first to say, "Oh my goodness, we need to figure out how to save some money." And it's easier to say than to implement, and that's what they're finding out. It takes time. Much like Mercedes-Benz will find out, it takes time. You can't just say it and have it happen overnight. And so, yeah, Nissan might not be around by the time it could have happened.
Yeah, and they already have dealers that aren't making any money. I mean, I got a buddy who's a franchise manager at a Nissan dealership, and they're turning into a glorified used car dealer. Yeah. So, and now we have the stair step stuff that's coming from Nissan too. That's every dealer's favorite thing, right?
Yeah, they pretty much.
Yeah,
so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I would assume that they're going to they'll be purchased by somebody in the next 8 to 12 months would be my assumption, because they're just not going to let it go bankrupt, I would guess. And maybe Honda owns it by that time. They get into a squeeze enough where they get a bailout, and then maybe they can be a company under Honda, and that looks a little bit better than bankruptcy, I would assume.
I would think, but apparently what do we know? The good folks at Nissan don't think it should play that way. I mean, what are they going to say? Hey, come on, we got the Z car. What do you have?
Yeah, well, I guess it's easy for us to talk about. We don't have any money invested into it. So
we don't have any skin in the game.
Yeah. All right, let's get out of here. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things. Ray, thank you. This was fun.
No, thank you. I always enjoy it. It's the best nearly 2 hours of my week.
Nearly 2 hours. We did 152 minutes. Nope. I need to go ahead and get off here. We did 1 hour and 52 minutes. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.